All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the advanced course of Achieve Anything Now. This is the first of 4 incredible, fun, power-packed webinars again. And remember that this course is here to help you meet this need, which is, I have down here that the real need of every person is to develop self-awareness and emotional release strategies to face the problems of life every day. So if somebody ever asks you, hey, what's this course about? Just remember very simply, we all go to the big Tony Robbins events or the big seminars to create some big change. And then there's the coaching to help you strategically week to week over the course of time. And this is the only unique course that I know of that literally helps you emotionally release all the resistance that's keeping you from moving toward your goals on a daily basis in as little as 8 minutes a day. So that's what I think is so exciting about it. So that being said, let's just jump straight into our course, because let's do a quick review. So like anything, when we continue to go through the information, it gets transitioned from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. So a quick overview of the basic and the advanced course is that we want to use the model of David Hawkins' work here, which basically just says that we want to release all of the negative emotions that we've stored in our unconscious mind, all the way down here from shame at the bottom to guilt, apathy, grief, I'm right over here, fear, desire, anger, pride. We want to clear up all these negative emotions that hold us back from having the courage to move forward in the future, having a neutral mindset that we're safe, collapsing our dichotomies, being willing to move forward, have a sense of acceptance of life and everything that it is, good and bad. Have reason to decide and choose what we want to have, but then let it go moving forward. And of course, love and joy and peace. We all know that. So the whole premise of the course, if you remember, you can have everything in life equals MC squared minus 2R. We can have everything that we want if we have the right motivation, concentration, and commitment. Then let go of all of our negative emotions, because as we let go of our negative emotions, we naturally vibrate at higher and higher energy levels. And of course, like attracts like. And so the higher we are in our energies, the happier we are. You see the positive emotions there. And we also had an interesting distinction in the basic course, which was, what if there were just certain thought forms, because thoughts are things, that were attracted to each one of these as well? So what if our thoughts weren't even really our thoughts? What if they were just thoughts that most people at these energy levels felt? That'd be pretty cool, because then we could even just be removed from our thoughts and those energies quicker and easier. And then it's almost like you just bump to higher level thoughts all the time. They naturally come, these reframes that we have, the new distinctions that open us up to more and more life. So that's always kind of, I think, an interesting, unique little twist on this, that as we move forward, as we move higher and higher, we're naturally just also attracting higher and higher and better thoughts is a natural result of that. So the way that we work to do this is by building rapport with our unconscious mind. And building rapport with our unconscious mind, of course, equals relaxation. That's how we do it. Relaxation equals rapport. So we have our 3 selves. Remember, we have the critical parent and the nurturing parent. It's the conscious mind or the left brain, and they talk to the unconscious mind down here, right? So the conscious mind, whether it's critical parent or nurturing parent, gives focus and direction. The unconscious mind is like a 7-year-old. It stores all of our negative memories. It wants to keep us whole and healed and complete because it has a perfect blueprint of the body. It stores all of our memories. Like I said, it brings up negative memories for us to clear and release. But the funny thing is, it needs the conscious mind's permission. It just needs us to say a simple statement of the conscious mind just saying, hey, let's let this go. I give you permission to let it go. That's all we need. Is the unconscious mind just needs to know it's okay. Let's let this stuff go. But up until this point, most of our lives, we've had that negative thing come up, and what do? We just shove it back down. Don't feel like it, don't want to do it, don't want to make it happen, so we shove it back down. But then that's how we learn, by taking a new association and creating it to something that we already have stored in the unconscious mind. So by clearing things up in the unconscious mind, we're actually like decreasing the ratio. So it might be 50-50, negative, positive. As we clear up the negative, we might only have 40%. Well, that means that there's a gap there. 40% is disempowering. Now 50% is positive. So we bring something new in. It gets linked up to the 50, and we naturally fill in that gap with more positive. So now it's 60-40. Then we release more. Then it's 30% negative. So more and more of our new life experiences become positive. And then maybe it's 80-20. Right? So only 20% is negative or disempowering in those lower energy forms. So all of a sudden then we have 80% positive, and we're actually having a profound impact in the psyche by creating more and more powerful emotions to life. And that's how life just gets better and better and better as we release those, the stuff from the past, the negative emotions and feelings. The future just gets better and better and better. And the great thing is, when we collapse these two between the conscious and the unconscious mind, we open the doorway to, of course, the higher self. And the higher self represents truth, love, oneness, universal consciousness, God itself, right? We get connected to the infinite source of love, healing energy. We get connected to that sense of intuition. You've heard it called a lot of different things: ultimate truth, divine inspiration, God, higher self, whatever you choose to call it. We get connected to those moments of brilliance and those places of flow. So relaxation equals rapport, and we want to float down in our cycles per second in our brain waves, going from being conscious to more of an unconscious balance there. And the basic course focused on, we have 7 different things that we use as clearing tools. We clear anger, sadness, fear, and anxiety. Remember, anxiety is just a future fear. Guilt and regret, limiting decisions. Those are the first 5. Anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions. And forgiveness is number 6. We had a basic forgiveness at the end of basic course. We're going to have 2 more forgiveness, deeper, more intense forgiveness audio meditations, and they come up actually next week. So you'll be excited to know that that's there and you'll have that to look forward to. And then, of course, we add in the 7th one in the advanced course, which is dichotomies, which is ironically what we're doing when we clear the conscious and the unconscious mind. We clear those dichotomies, we collapse those, and then that opens the door to the infinite resources of the universe, and we collapse those between all 3. So things get really exciting and really fun here as we move along. So we talked about the morning meditation right at the end of the basic course. I hope you've integrated some of this. Remember that the morning meditation is just simply doing something for some oxygen, eating something healthy, reading or feeding your brain something good, and reviewing your schedule, your strategy for the day, writing your goals, whatever that is, of course, and then doing your morning meditations. We had our basic emotional release: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and regret, limiting decisions, practice forgiveness. We do that through our meditations. We also gave, in addition to releasing anger, sadness, fear, guilt, forgiveness, limiting decisions, we had the 4-step process, which is clearing your conscious mind of all the limiting decisions and beliefs, clearing your unconscious mind, which is all the emotional aspects of it, putting your goal right into the future, and then asking for a clear next step moving forward, right? Because that's the voice inside your head that you can trust, is what comes to you after you clear everything up, because that's that higher self coming in. And of course, you'll know when the change is happening. Hopefully you've continued to do your clearing work every day. I still do it 2.5 years later. You'll notice and you'll be convinced that happens through several things. One of them very simply is you'll notice little escapes of all the little things that maybe you used to get eaten on. You'll be right there instead, and things will almost happen but not quite, and you'll have what we call lucky coincidences happening, which aren't really luck, but that's the way it is. And then, of course, you'll find yourself more in a natural state of flow, where action and awareness merge. You have that sense of having clarity and focus on one, but then you let it go and you just kind of flow through the day and flow through actions. You'll have a real sense of control of getting stuff done. You'll have a little bit of a loss of self-consciousness, a lot of that self-talk inside your head, and there'll be a transformation of time. You've heard that. I use the example all the time about musicians, like Mark Schultz, and he says, look, I just sat down at the piano and the song wrote itself in 20 minutes. Right? I sat down and had a moment of flow when Ashley came up with this course about 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Came up as a moment of inspiration. I wrote it all down, revised it once or twice within a matter of about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I promptly lost the piece of paper for a couple of years. So until I had cleared up enough of the stuff that I was ready for it. So that's how that goes, basic course overview. And so remember, one of the biggest questions last time as well is, how do you know when the emotion or the limiting decisions have released? First one is you just say and give the command to your unconscious mind, hey, let's release this now. If you're breathing through the emotions, you'll literally feel them like pop or be like, and then it's gone, right? And you'll notice those sensations inside your body just stop, and they'll be replaced almost like with a little bit of an emptiness because you need to fill it in with something. And then, of course, we always say thank you at the end. Thank you at the end. So let's get into the advanced course from today and talk about what is a timeline. So timeline was originally brought about through a gentleman named Tad James. He's the one who's trademarked timeline. So you'll hear many different things in the NLP world. You'll hear timeline referred to as timeline therapy. That's Tad James. His son, Matt James, has a new school of thought. It's the same thing, just a different name. It's called time empowerment techniques. He uses MER, mental emotional release, is what he calls it. There are some other people, L. Michael Hall and some other people in the NLP world called it timelining. They pluralized it, made it like real life now, timelining. And then pluralize it, but I hope you get the point, right? I misspoke, excuse me. So it can be called many different things. If you go to a Tony Robbins event, he'll do this as a meditation where he has you just imagine going back over the past and floating back towards now in this little bubble and just pull out all these negative videotapes out of your cabinet of videotapes, all these negative videotapes, and just throw them away. But you do it in like this little bubble. Timeline work can take many, many, many different forms. And so one of the first things that I want to unpack and pre-frame you on timeline work, which is literally however you do it is right for you. It's absolutely perfect. Whether it's something that's you experience visually as a picture, whether it's something that you experience auditorily, or whether it's something that's kinesthetic or just like a feeling. I've experienced all of those in timeline clearing work. So it may be different every time also based on how your unconscious mind has stored those representations from your past. So remember that however you do it is absolutely perfect for you, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. So timeline means that you're storing your memories inside your mind in some orderly fashion. Now, the reason that timeline is important and why it's important is we touched on this with this picture before here. The reason why it's sideways is most people experience their timeline linearly inside their mind. And so I want to explain a gestalt. So what happens is we may have one significant event. That's why this one is red. We might have some significant event, like let's just say you're a little kid and everything's wonderful, and all of a sudden you've been sneaking a cookie, and all of a sudden, right when you have your hand in the cookie jar, mom walks in, scares the daylights out of you and says, "What are you doing?" Right? You have an intense emotional experience right there in that moment. You say, "Oh my gosh, I shouldn't take this. I shouldn't have this cookie." And in that intense emotional moment where you're like, "I'm busted," right? You create an experience that your mind stores and encodes visually, auditorily, and kinesthetically. And if it's a negative event, like mom says, "Stop that, you're stealing, you're a stealer," that would be a very bad negative event. But what happens then is next time you maybe even go to take anything like even if maybe it's just an apple before dinner or something like that. Let's say that all of a sudden there was this heightened emotional experience and you wanted an apple, but you weren't sure if you could have it or not. And without mom even being there, all of a sudden you grab the apple and you sneakily take a bite or whatever. That fear of getting caught by mom because of that intense emotional experience gets linked up to the same. Taking the apple was the same as what happened with the cookie. And so fear gets connected. It's like we build this little connection bridge to this experience of fear. And then that comes up next time we take an apple, next time we take an apple, next time we take a Frito, next time we take a bag of chips, next time we just sneak something real quick while we're cooking before dinner. And we just keep building upon this fear of this event of being connected, in these collective group of experiences all of a sudden become a gestalt. And what may happen is, you know what, now you're munching, eating in the closet, or a person, not you, but a person is, munching and eating in the closet now as an adult, wondering why they're doing that, right? Because way back when, all these experiences have all linked up in what we call this gestalt of this one fear-driven event back in the future. Back in the past. So what we did in the basic course was we just asked the unconscious mind, hey, let's go back and clear up an event. And maybe it just went back and cleared up this one event of, hey, I remember when there was an apple there. Oops, excuse me. Didn't mean to do that. I just go back and remember, hey, I remember this incident with the apple and I was just scared of whether or not I was going to have mom come in and get busted. There was some fear there. So you maybe just clear this one up, this one event. So all of a sudden there's a little gap there. Imagine that little guy being gone. However, you may still find yourself in the closet out here munching on something else, because the gestalt is still here. Because see, we start to link other words up besides fear. It might be just a pinch of discomfort or a piece of something else. So we have other pieces of this gestalt that come out, maybe in different contexts or different things. So it's good to clear this one thing up, because that's all clearing is good clearing. But if we want to really accelerate results, we want to come back and ask our unconscious mind to go back to the very first event, that root event, which when disconnected, will allow the entire gestalt, everything out here, all this out here, to just be released of the emotion. And so that's what we're always working to do in Gestalt. And I want to make this really clear. When we're clearing things up, sometimes we may just go back to this event and it'll clear out just this piece right here as it goes to here and maybe here. Then since we cleared this up, maybe the next time we'll go back and we'll clear this one up. And then we can clear up this and this. So now this whole piece here, if you imagine that, all that is out. And when we really, really have built some great rapport with the unconscious mind, and we go back from 0 to 7 or even farther back than that, we'll get into that in a few minutes here, we can collapse huge pieces of the gestalt. If we can actually hit this very first event, the root event, which when disconnected will allow all these events to let go, that's where huge change happens. Huge change happens in terms of our psyche, and allowing shifting that ratio, right, from 50-50 to only 40% is disempowered, because we're literally removing huge pieces out of the psyche of these negative emotions. That's why I said this really accelerates your results. All right? So how does a person store time inside their mind? So we're going to go into this real quick. So how a person stores time in their mind. I'm going to go forward real quick. Okay, perfect. So how a person stores time in their mind, we found in timeline work that they generally store time one of two different ways. So if you think about this conceptually, just imagine every time you blink, your mind just takes a visual snapshot of the world around you, right? So imagine just how many times you've gone to, say, Target or your favorite grocery store or your favorite restaurant. How many times have you parked your car in that parking lot? Well, imagine if you go out tomorrow and you take a snapshot of, here I am, there's my car. You go into Target. When you come back out and you say, hey, where'd I park my car? Because there's different cars every single time. Even if you park in the exact same spot, there's still different cars around you all the time. So how do you know? How does your unconscious mind know what memory to bring up that shows you where your car is, I mean, think about it. How would you know? Because if it's taking a snapshot all the time, imagine I'm 48, I'll be 49 this year. Imagine 49 if it take out, let's just say we take out 20 years since I got my driver's license, 16 years since I got my driver's license. I have 33 years of pictures to sort out which is my car, what's my current car, and which parking lot I parked my car in, and which one's the one I just did. So imagine if all those pictures are in one big, huge box and I had to try to sort through them. The unconscious mind would go crazy. So your timeline is how you unconsciously started to sort and store all that information on where you parked your car. So when your conscious mind asks the unconscious mind, hey, where did I park my car? You get it just like that. So there are two patterns of how people store time inside their head. I'm going to use a little annotation drawing guide tonight. There are two ways. The first way is what we call in time. So people store time inside their mind, some direction in relationship to their body. In time people, their timeline generally goes from front to back, and their timeline goes straight through their head. So they tend to see what's just right in front of them because they're right here. And if they're looking ahead, they're seeing just what's right here. And that's what they see. So there are certain characteristics of that. People who see time through in time have certain characteristics. See if this tends to be more you versus the opposite. My wife is in time. She tends to be late. She tends to always be 5-10 minutes. She's always rushing out the door to get my daughter. However, she's very flexible. She's very in the moment. That's how I remember in time. She's very in the moment. So she's very spontaneous. She's very flexible. She loves variety. She never likes to go to the same place, do the same thing twice. She's also what we would say, how would I say that? She is... has a tendency sometimes to be a little bit more associated into her emotions now. She forgives very easily. She says things like, you know what? That's past me now. The past is past. That's in the past. She forgives and forgets very, very quickly. The opposite of that, of course, is through time. In through time people, they're different because through time people, they see direction from them in relationship to their body. So they are out here somewhere. So my timeline, I used to be through time. I still am, but I've changed my timeline. My timeline used to be out here to my left, so I could always see my past, and then it would come straight up like this, right around the front of my head, and then it would come straight out to the right like this, right out here in this direction, kind of like a number line out in front of me. So I tended to be, since it didn't go through my head, I tended to be disassociated to my emotions, which means I was a little bit more of an introvert, a little harder for me to go all passionate and emotional in the moment, so to speak. I always had to be 5-10 minutes late. I always wear a watch. I know when other people are late. I notice when other people are late. I could tell you exactly what I'm doing the whole rest of this week. I use a day planner, day timer. I'm not going to bore you with it, but I can tell you everything that's going on in my time, through the rest of this week, through my weekend, and into next week. I can lay out a chronological time frame of it, no problem. And I don't get stressed about that. I get stressed when I'm not on time, when things aren't going how I think they should go inside my mind. That's how I get stressed. My wife gets stressed the opposite way. She gets stressed when she has to be a certain place at a certain time and do some of those things. So taking a look at that, let's bring that to life a little bit more. Let me get my cursor back here. All right. So in time, I'm sorry, we're going to go back. I'm going to help you find your timeline. So we're going to actually just find your timeline right now. So what I'd like for you to do is this. Just go ahead and close your eyes and go ahead and you remember how to breathe, right? Take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just nice and gentle. And go ahead and take another deep breath in and just relax All the muscles are on your face. Just go ahead and relax. What I'd like for you to do is, just with your active imagine, just remember a time in the past and notice where that picture comes from. It'll come to you in some direction in relationship to your body. Maybe it comes from left to right. Or remember another happy time in the past and just notice where that picture comes from. Just notice how it feels. Is it kind of behind you? Is it out to your left, your right? Where does that picture come from? Not where does it end up in front of you, but where does that picture come from? And if you just kind of notice that direction, if you just go ahead and look into the future, think about something maybe you're going to do tomorrow, next week, farther out, another holiday, right? Or remember from the past what happened yesterday on Valentine's Day. Where does that memory come from? And maybe go out to, do you have some plans at St. Patrick's Day, or when's the last day of school for your kids? And just notice kind of where that is in direction in relationship to your body. And if you would just go ahead and notice where the past was again, what direction would you just naturally point? And if you were going to take a look out to the future again, just notice where would you just naturally look, even if you just unconsciously just turn your head to the right or to the left or front to back. Where is that picture? Where would you just unconsciously kind of point? And if you have those 2 points, just imagine a line in between them. That's your timeline. Just that simple. And there will be our first audio. We'll go into that a little bit more in depth in terms of the process. You can open up your eyes now. So there will be a more in-depth audio in relationship to that. So you can just find your timeline. And it's really simple. You can be in time or through time. So we talked about that a little bit. We just started to explain the Gestalt. So let's talk about how it releases emotions. So if you imagine this, we go back and we have the very first event. Now I'm explaining this in a linear direction. So time, people who are through time, moving through time linearly, you totally get this, because this will make sense to you. You go back into the past and you have a very first event, the root event of an issue. And then we learn by creating something new. So then we have another one, and all of a sudden we start to stack these together. And then we have another high-level significant emotional event with a lot of emotional intensity, and then another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, all the way back to now. And then you can actually project those into the future. That's what anxiety is when you start to see more negative events in the future. That's a negative gestalt, right? And that creates fear and anxiety of the future. So this is a visual representation of a gestalt. Like I said, it's good to go back in and release one of these at a time, because you can go back and just release from here back to now, or from here back to now, or from here back to now, or even from something that seems almost a little not so emotional, but maybe it's a limiting decision and that clears it up back towards now. We always want to shoot for going back as far back as we can in the past to that very first event. I'm going to say it again. What's the very first event, the root event, which when disconnected will allow you to let go of all these. And let go of all the emotion on all the events all the way back to now. So the reason that it collapses the emotions is because imagine these are dominoes. The first one, when we release it, tips into this one, tips into this one, tips into this one, tips into this one, and the whole thing just releases. Imagine just taking all the legs out from underneath the table. That's what happens when we release those negative emotional events from a gestalt. The whole thing just collapses because it can't stand under the weight of the emotion anymore. The emotion just disappears, so the table collapses. So that's how and why the timeline process and procedure works. So what can you expect your unconscious mind to give you when we go back to clear things up? So I'm going to go back. This is right here. So let's just focus on this part first. I know I gave you everything here, but let's look at this. We have a gestalt with the very first event, and then we have all these subsequent events with significant emotional events. A gentleman named Massey wrote a book called The People Puzzle, and he had a nice little theory here. And I'm going to move this for a second so I can draw again. His theory was this. His theory was that we as human beings, we go through 3 main learning periods. He called these the imprint, the modeling phase, and the socialization phase. So if I break this down here real quick, let's just pretend this is your moment of birth. Okay, that's going to be B. This is maybe 7 years old, 0 to 7. This is 14. And this is 21. This is how his model worked. He said from 0 to 7 here, right? This is where all of our core programming in our timeline starts. And the reason that that the programming starts here is because from 0 to 7, we are only an unconscious mind. That's it. There is no conscious mind that develops. In hypnosis, you can't hypnotize somebody under 7 years old because they already are. They have what we call no filters. So they can't consciously choose, I like this, I like that, I like this, I don't like that, I choose to believe this, I choose to believe that. I mean, when was the last time for you, those of you who have kids, that could reason with your baby and say, now, honey, I know you're hungry and you're only 2 years old, but just stop crying because logically, I know that you can process this. I'm putting the milk right in the microwave now. I have whatever, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever, warming up right now and it'll be done in 30 seconds. See, 30 seconds on the microwave, so just quit crying and it'll be here in just a minute. When was the last time you could reason with a child? You can't. So all this happens in this base programming back here, because this is also when and where, I need to find my cursor again, sorry. This is also when and where all of our language, right, our verbal language is built as well. So we start to link unconsciously, ouch, baby, happy, milk, mom, dad. We start to unconsciously filter and link all these emotional experiences to the words that we use unconsciously. So yes, I'm going to say none of this is your fault. All the negative stuff that you have is negative results. It's not your fault because guess why? It was all layered in by mom and dad and your environment and your key primary caregivers and everything all the way before 0 to 7. That's why they say psychologically one of the hardest things to do is to forgive mom and dad. As the conscious mind develops, it's 7, right? Right here, this is when the conscious mind develops. All of a sudden, the unconscious mind starts getting pushed down. But see, we keep having all these new experiences here, here, and here. And guess what they get linked to? They get linked to all this programming back here, because that's how we learn. Remember how I just said we learn? We take a new experience and we link it to something in the unconscious mind that's back here. Well, if this is a negative gestalt, anything that's close to it out here now, we're going to sometimes model towards. That's why I said the modeling phase up here. We only model 2 ways, towards and away from, plus and minus, our primary caregivers. So we start to say, okay, yes, I like this, I don't like this. And we can kind of consciously choose what we're starting to build things on here. But a lot of this is all base programming. And we remember one of the prime directives of the unconscious mind is to assign meaning to things. Then all of a sudden, this isn't so relevant in terms of timeline work, but it is a little bit. We shift from the modeling phase here, of going towards and away from mom and dad and what we liked and didn't like about them. And we move into the socialization phase. For those of you who have teenagers, my daughter just turned 13. My son's just turning the corner from his teenage years at 21. They break away from mom and dad, the primary people who they're modeling, and they start to compare themselves to everybody else in their environment. This is where all the cliques develop in junior high and high school. You got the band geeks, you got the nerds, you got the golf people, you got the jocks, you got the cheerleaders, you have all this stuff because they're all trying to identify and socialize. And so all of those events way out here all get stacked onto all these previous gestalts and making that work. So when we do timeline work and we want to discover the root cause, generally speaking, all root cause happens here from 0 to 7. Okay? So all root cause, we want to try to find it and ask the unconscious mind to take us at least back to 0 to 7. And you'll get all that. Now I'm going to throw in one more fun piece to stretch your brain, because you're saying, okay, James, but what's this stuff about the womb that's on here, past lives, genealogy? What the heck is all that stuff, right? I'm going to give you that here real quick. Do you recall and remember that when the previous slide, when I said, hey, let's talk about the unconscious mind and how it's going to bring up events that you need, or that how is it going to bring back up those events? If it's a 7-year-old, how is it going to bring back up these events for you to clear? And I used the metaphor of it's like a 7-year-old with 5 big fat crayons, the big huge fat ones that they can hardly use because they don't have that much motor control in their hands, and they have to describe all these events. The brain is going to give you, remember I said it could bring something up visually, auditorily, kinesthetically. It can be, and the unconscious mind works in pictures, symbols, metaphors, stories. It's going to give you probably all of these things. It's going to give you actual memories of your life from 0 to 7. And it's going to give you stuff that maybe happened in the womb as a metaphorical representation. It's going to give you stuff that was maybe you metaphorically you perceive as a past life, how many lifetimes ago, and it could give you something genealogically, right? Something that was passed down. I told you that in our last call or the last webinar as an example. It makes total sense. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, but he died when my dad was really young. Guess what? My dad was an entrepreneur. He opened his business when I was in 4th grade. Jump forward, my dad didn't successfully build his business. He did for 15 years, but then his business went under. Guess what? I became an entrepreneur. And guess when I started my business and went out full time at it? When my son was in 4th grade, right? And now I'm extremely more successful than my father was already just in the few short years I've been doing it full time. So there are patterns of behavior that can hand it down to us genealogically. There are things that happen in terms of past life. Now, this is for your conscious mind out there. If your conscious mind is saying, yeah, but I don't know that I really believe that that's true. I'm not asking you to believe that it's true. What I am asking you to believe is just accept the presupposition, the premise, that it's your unconscious mind, that little 7-year-old who's sitting there with these big crayons just trying somehow to bring up this negative emotional event so it can be more whole and healed and complete, which is what it's primed to do. It's just trying to find a way that it can express that to the conscious mind. So the conscious mind can say, great, let's let it go so we can be more whole and healed and complete. And the unconscious mind brings that up and says, great, here it is, let's let it go. That's all I'm asking you to either accept as a premise or not. Because the bottom line is we will never know if it's true, if it's not true, if we had a past life, if we didn't have a past life, if this really was my grandmother 3 generations ago that decided, I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or whatever that is, or my Uncle Bob who said this, or it doesn't matter truly for our life today. All that really matters is that it's the unconscious mind's representation of that disempowering or negative emotional event that we want to use so that we can put some distinction to letting things go and clearing things up. So if you can agree with that, awesome. I hope you can. And we're gonna clear the screen first here. Excuse me for this. Clear my drawing. All right. So that's all I'm asking you to do. I've had everything happen. I was born 3 months early, so I've cleared up stuff that would happen when I was born. I've cleared up stuff that happened in the womb, and I've cleared stuff up in past lives and genealogical, and it's all been sometimes really weird metaphorical stuff. So let go of the literal context of it and just use it for what it is, which is it's a metaphorical representation of letting things go. So what are timeline positions? Let's talk through this real quick. So this is how some of the timeline work is going to be. We're going to ask you to close your eyes, tap, relax, notice your timeline. We're just going to say, great. Is it okay for your unconscious mind for you to clear up this anger today and for you to be aware of it consciously? It'll always say yes, usually, because that's what it's programmed to do. We just want to get that buy-in. Then we're going to say, great. We're going to ask you, excuse me, hang on one second. Let me flip ahead because I don't want to okay, perfect. Excuse me for a second. So this is how the timeline process is going to work. So I'm basically telling you what the audios are going to lead you through before we get there. All right. So you're going to be here at now. And I'm just going to ask you, once you know where your timeline is, that's going to be the first CD, audio that you listen to, so you know where your timeline is. I'll tell you right now, if you get into this and you don't know where your timeline is, great, call me, we'll go through it, and we'll do it. We're just going to ask you to float right up above now, looking down on yourself. And then we're just going to ask you to float all the way back to the past. But before we do that, I'm just going to say, great. Now it's time for us to do some timeline work. And so we're going to clear up anger. There's going to be, remember our 4 primary emotions: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, plus the limiting decisions. That's the 5th one. There is a specific timeline release for each one of them. Same with anger. When you do anger, you're going to have to clear up sadness. Okay? So you're going to have to do both of those in a row, just like before. And I'm basically going to talk you through it something like this. It's just going to say, great, close your eyes and relax. Notice your timeline. And as you do your timeline processes, remember that however you do your timeline process is absolutely perfect for you. It could be an experience like sounds floating on the wind. It could be a feeling like something kinesthetic, like floating in a bathtub, or it could be something visual. However you do your timeline work is absolutely perfect for you. So with your active imagination, if you could, just imagine floating right up above now. As you float right up above now, just go ahead and turn and look towards the past. And as you look towards the past, we're just going to ask your unconscious mind, what's the very first event, the root event, which when disconnected, will allow you to let go of that anger, sadness, fear, guilt, whatever we're doing easily and effortlessly. Or if it was a limiting decision, I would say, when was the very first time that you chose to believe that you couldn't do something? Right? What's the very first event, the root event, which when disconnected will allow you to let go of that negative emotion or that limiting decision easily and effortlessly? And is it okay for you to let go of that today and to be aware of it consciously? If that answer is yes, then perfect. If not, call me. That means that there's some extra resistance there we may need to deal with. I'll lead you through it on the phone. Almost always your unconscious mind says yes. And so we're just going to float all the way back. I'm just going to ask you to float all the way back. Just float all the way back. And if you were to know, was it before, during, or after your birth? If you say it was, if your unconscious mind it's just like when you say, hey, where are my keys? And you get something, it comes to you just like that. You can trust in it. Same thing. When I ask you the question, so if you were to know, what's the very first event, the root event, which when disconnected will allow you to let go of your emotions easily and effortlessly? If you were to know, was it before, during, or after your birth? If you say after inside your mind, I'm just going to say, great. If you were to know, how old were you? What year was it? If you say before your birth, I'm going to say, then I'm just going to give you the suggestion in there. It's all worded in there. I'm going to say, great. If it was in the womb, what month was it? And a number will just pop in your mind and say, great. And if it was before your birth, was it something that was handed down to you genealogically or a past life? And how many generations or how many past lives ago it was? And your unconscious mind will give you a number just like that. It'll say 3, 4, 2, 7, 8, 15, 22, whatever. I've gone back and metaphorically cleared up stuff all the way back to Adam and Eve. And I've actually gone up and cleared up stuff all the way back to the Big Bang, right before life even began, so to speak. So whatever you clear up is absolutely right and absolutely perfect for you. And that also includes based on your personal beliefs as well. So then we're just going to have you float all the way back, even farther to that very first event. And this event, which is here number 4, that could be something that is right now metaphorically after your birth. It could be in the womb or it could be before. But we're just going to ask you to float all the way back to that event. And I'm just going to say, notice when you get there. So notice when you're right above the event, looking down on the event, and let me know when you're there. And you'll be there and you'll kind of notice it and you'll see it. And I'm going to say, great. And then I'm going to float back here, say, go back before that event ever happened. This is the genius of the presupposition of that. If we say, what's the very first event, the root event, which when disconnected will allow you to let go of I can't, right? I can't. Before that event ever happened, was that belief there? Nope. So it naturally disassociates us from those feelings. And so we're going to go back before that event, before the root event, which when disconnected will allow you to let that go. And we're going to turn and look back towards now. So we're going to look this way. And then we're just going to say, great, what is there to learn from that? The learning of which will allow you to let go of those negative emotions easily and effortlessly, or that decision easily and effortlessly. So we're just saying, what is there? I'm sorry, I know I said that fast. What is there to learn from that? The learning of which will allow you to let go of those negative emotions easily and effortlessly. So let's talk about a learning real quick. A learning is something positive that empowers you moving forward, makes you more whole and healed and complete. And it could be something like a reframe, like, oh, my mom did love me. She was just thinking this instead. Or it could be something that you know is a truth, which is, you know what, I'm a child of God and I'm always connected. It could be a belief, or it could be something that's a new look at whatever this experience is. And you'll notice we continue to breathe here. You do your breathing, and you'll notice as soon as your unconscious mind gets that learning, it just lets go. That's how you know when it disappears. Then we're going to do something fun and exciting, which is we're actually going to go from the event here, and I'm going to ask you to float down inside the event now with those new learnings in the front of your mind. And notice where those old emotions, are they there or have they disappeared? And any of those old decisions, are they there or have they disappeared too? And they'll go away. And so then you just come back up here and you check. Right? So we're going to come back up here and turn and look towards now after we do that little check to make sure the emotions are gone. That's just for your conscious mind to have a full understanding of it, so it knows that everything has disappeared and the process has worked. Now, if for some reason something doesn't release, I'm going to say, great, just float up higher and farther back. So if I say float up higher and farther back, we're just going to keep removing you. And maybe you come out here, and if there's still some emotion, you just float up higher and farther back. And you just keep going higher and farther back until the emotion disappears. This is all in the meditation. I know I'm unpacking this linearly. And then when that disappears, way out here, when that disappears, then we're going to ask you to come all the way back down in the event again, double check on the emotions until they disappear, and then come all the way back up here. And then we're going to do two things again. We're going to imagine, I ran out of screen, sorry. We're going to imagine the infinite source of love healing energy right above the top of your head while you're in the audio. And we're going to bring it all the way down into you, and we're going to fill you up with that infinite source of love healing energy until all those little dark spots in there are gone, until you're totally whole and healed and complete. And then we're just going to ask you to flow that infinite source of love healing energy from above you, down through you, through your heart or that spot, right, your third eye, all the way down into the event. So you're going to make this one big, I'm not doing this very well, make this one big flowing energy loop down here, and then flow that energy all the way back through your timeline, letting all the subsequent events realign themselves all the way back to now. I'm having total fun making a mess. I hope I'm not giving you a headache. But we're just going to flow that infinite source of love healing energy in through the top of your head. You're the light is you. Flow it down into that event until all the people in events are totally whole and healed and complete, and let it come all the way back towards now, and then all the way out into the future with those new ways of being, doing, having, so that everything is released as a result. And then you just come all the way back towards now until you're right above now, open your eyes and come back down in the room. So I know that sounds really long. I know it's a big jumbled up mess here on the screen. However, it's really simple. All the audios are still only 8 minutes long. So let me put it into a simple process one last time. Where are you now? Great. Is it okay for you to release this emotion today and for you to be aware of it consciously? Yes. Awesome. Float right up above now. However you do your timeline is absolutely perfect for you. It could be like sounds floating on the wind, floating in a bathtub kinesthetically or visually. However you do it is perfect for you. I'm just going to say, great, is it okay for you to release this emotion today and for you to be aware of it consciously? Great. If you were to know, what's the very first event, the root event, which when disconnected will allow you to let all of those emotions go? If you were to know, was it before, during, or after your birth? If it was after your birth, was it 0 to 7? If it was in the womb, what month? If it was a past life, how many lifetimes ago? If it was a genealogical, how many generations ago? And then we're going to say, great. Once you have that, we're just going to say, great. Looking through your own eyes, go ahead and look towards the past, float all the way back above that event, all the way back above now, and look down on that event. Awesome. Now just float back before that event, turn around and look towards now, and ask yourself, what is there to learn from that, the learning of which will allow you to let go of those emotions easily and effortlessly. And they can come to you consciously and unconsciously. Notice when the emotion disappears. If the emotion doesn't disappear, we're just going to go up higher and farther back, still looking towards now, until the emotion disappears and you have the learnings. Once that's done, great. We're just going to go float right down into that event in your timeline. Check on the emotions. Are they there? Have they disappeared? They've disappeared. Great. Float right back up to your safe space here. Wonderful. Once you're here, let that infinite source of love, healing energy come right down into you until you're whole and healed and complete. And the light is you and you're the light. And just go ahead and channel that down through your third eye into that event until everybody here is whole and healed and complete. Bring it all the way back towards now, letting your unconscious mind drop out anything that it wants to in that gestalt that's still a significant emotional event. And then once you come back to now, go ahead and channel that all the way out into the future with those new ways of being, doing, having, with all that new empowerment from those new learnings and that new energy. Great. And then we're just going to say, come back towards now. And when you're ready, go ahead and float right back down into now. Open your eyes and come back in the room. It's just that simple. So take a moment and please write down any and all questions that you may have, because we're going to do Q&A here in just a minute, and I imagine there's probably quite a few questions for us here. But go ahead and write that down. Write your questions down. I'm going to stop for a second and clear the screen here. All right, so charging forward, so we stay on time here. That's timeline. So the audios that you'll receive this week, I'm going to give you an audio. It'll be in a new Dropbox file. So look for a new audio Dropbox file, please. And look for we're going to do it all together. I'm going to do it all in one Dropbox file again, like I did last time, I believe. So you'll get a new Dropbox file for the advanced course. You'll have, of course, the video and audio from today with the PowerPoint and the audio. And then you're going to have 5 audios for this week. Or no, 6, excuse me. The first audio is going to be, I keep thinking I'm drawing still. The first audio is going to be discovering your timeline. So you'll be able to discover if you're in time or through time. This is Proactive Week. If you have any problems or challenges with discovering your timeline after going through this you shouldn't. But if anybody does, give me a call. We'll do it together. Then we're just going to do normal clearing work like we have all the way up to this point for the last 5, almost 6 weeks now. Just like before, if you're angry, you drop in the anger clearing process. And just to say, light up the anger where you're just releasing one thing. Now you're just going to say, what's the pattern in this? What is this? And just say, great, let's just let go of this anger. But this time go back to the very first event. The very first event related to this anger, the very first event when disconnected will allow me to release all this anger that I have inside and do the timeline process, right, for your anger. If you do anger, you have to do sadness. All the other ones can be done individually. Sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decision can be done. So nothing has changed in terms of clearing work, except now we have, once you discover your timeline, now we have 5 more ways of releasing our primary emotions: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions. And you can use timeline to clear that up. Sometimes people say, well, which one do you recommend, or which one do you prefer? I'm going to give you some distinctions on that next time. As an absolute minimum between now and next time, I would just ask you to listen to these. And if you are in one of your emotional states, just go ahead and practice it. See which one you like better. I use both of these. Sometimes I do timeline. Sometimes I do the individual clearing ones. It just depends on how I feel. If it's more of a kinesthetic thing, I'll probably use the ones from the basic course. If it's something that comes up as a picture or something from my childhood, visual things, that's a good cue for how do I know when to use timeline. If I get if my unconscious mind brings up something from a long time ago, like when I was a kid, or my mom or my dad or Uncle Bob or something like that, if it's something from the past, I go, oh, cool. Let me go back and clear that up because that's a cue. Then I clear it up all the way from Uncle Bob all the way back towards now. So part of that depends on what your unconscious mind will present to you in terms of which one to use. But for these purposes, just go back and clear something up from as far back as you can and have that be your homework between now and next week. And then, of course, as always, please remember to always say thank you to your unconscious mind because we want to build rapport. I'll say this also, if you have some challenges with any of this, relaxation equals rapport. You might be thinking about it too much, so go back and relax. Do some deep breathing first for 2 or 3 minutes, and then put on the timeline tape. Another suggestion would be I just did this last week. I was feeling kind of out of sorts a little bit. So I went back and listened to the inner child meditation to go back, stay connected with little Jimmy, right? My little inner guy, and get connected there. And then I said, great. I know I'm pushing up against this one thing. I don't quite have it figured out yet. Now that I really have some rapport with you, let's work on that. So you may want to go back and listen to inner child and then do some of the timeline stuff if you're feeling sticky. And of course, with this as well, always give me a call. All right. So session number 2, preview. I need to change these slides. I apologize. I missed that. Next week, which will be February 22nd. Okay. We're going to continue on with timelines. So it's really important that you find and discover your timeline. If you don't, you need to call me because we're going to stack onto the timeline processes with the emotional releases. Some other things. Next week, we're going to use timeline to release anxiety, which means we're going to go out into the future of our timeline and work there, placing a goal in our future. That's future timeline out here as well. If you got that, you're probably through time because you're linear out here. We're going to have 2 new forgiveness techniques that I told you about more in depth there. And we're going to do an introduction to dichotomies because dichotomies takes a lot of work to explain it and to do this. So that's it. So this is for next week. If you have any questions, problems, as always, stay in touch with me. Q&A. Send me all your feedback. And because I know we're a little bit over an hour, right at an hour, so I'm going to turn this off and jump straight into Q&A.